Hey everybody, Unstable Gamer here, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, thanks so much for stopping by. Definitely take a look around. Let me know what you think. Today we're going to be talking about who is the worst in Disney Mirrorverse. Does that mean they're absolutely the worst and they'll never get better? Not necessarily, but they're pretty bad, so we're going to go ahead and talk about them. But first, before we do, if you're just now finding this channel and you want to stay up to date with this and other games, consider hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out. All right, and welcome back. Just to get a couple things out of the way, all the links to my social media is in the description below, so definitely check that out. I do stream 3 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Saturdays, that's a recent change, at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you want to check out what's going on, definitely check the stream out. All right, so let's take a look at this. These are going to be the worst Guardians, and what I mean by that are these are probably the Guardians that you want to hold off on. You don't want to put a whole lot of resources in. I did recently put a video out on who is the best buy role. There's 4 in each role. If you haven't seen that, I'll go ahead and link it up right over here. But when it comes to this, I don't think there's enough bad Guardians to do 4 for each role, so we're only going to be taking a look at 2 for each role. As we continue to see this roster evolve, I'm sure we're going to go ahead and be able to come up with 4. But right now, we're going to look at 2 for each role. I've mentioned this before, but when it comes to resource management, it is absolutely critical in this game if you want to make consistent progress. If you just want to take your time and not worry about it, then play who you want. Enjoy the game. Get through the game as you want. Nobody needs to rush to the end. There's no race or anything like that. But just play who you want. Now, if you want to make some significant progress and continue to move forward fairly quickly, then you really want to pay attention to where you put your resources. And these are the 8 Guardians you probably want to hold back off on. Now, I would say you can get them all up to level 30. You get those resources pretty abundantly, so you can pretty much bring the whole bottom end of your roster up to level 30 pretty quickly. But at least that gives you, level 30. You get to play around with talents and things a little bit and get familiar with some of the Guardians, but definitely not any further than that. So first, we're going to go ahead and start with tanks. And when it comes to the reasoning behind a lot of this, I think you're going to find that it's pretty similar across all of them as to why you probably want to stay away from them. All right, so for a tank, first is going to be Sulley. I think when it comes to Sulley, Sulley is an all right tank. He has a stun that projects like a cone in front of him, so he can do a little bit of a stun there. His kit can do a little bit. I mean, if we just take a look at his abilities right here, he's got this armor up, so he gains some defense and some armor. This is where he has the stun. He does damage and knocks everybody back. This is kind of where I think he falls, because as a tank, I think you would really want to have a lure, which is a taunt in this game. Now, he only has that lure when he or an ally drops below 20% health, and only one time. He gets a little bit of attack buff, and then he has the lures. But as a tank, you want more of that. And unfortunately, in this game, not a lot of tanks have lure, or a lure that you can use pretty regularly, other than Simba. Simba's brand new, and you can use that now. So, I mean, with this, and he tends to fall off in the end game pretty quickly. He's just not that effective as a tank for me, especially when you have so many other options. The other one, as far as the tank goes, for me, is going to be Ursula. Now, this may change a little bit later, but Ursula, and as far as a tank goes, in this game, in its current state, Ursula is more effective when she focuses on one enemy, and then she gets pretty good. But then when she switches, and you switch a lot in this game, you lose that effectiveness with her. I mean, if we take a look at her abilities really quick, she has this attack debuff, which is cool. This binding contract activates the special ability. Ursula gains that defense. This activation does not need to be successful, which is cool. The binding contract doesn't need to be, which I think is pretty cool, and that's what this is right here. So it does some damage. Ursula's target inflicted with binding contract for the remainder of the encounter, or until Ursula is defeated, right? The target is rooted for 5 seconds, which is pretty good. And then this one right here, whenever an enemy inflicted with binding contract gets defeated, Ursula gains armor. Again, you want to focus on a singular enemy. The more that she's focused on that one enemy, the better. Right here, the debuffs are removed if Ursula switches or moves away from her current target. Now, the reason why I say this may change a little bit later on is because Rift Raids are coming, and maybe we have some boss battles. I'm thinking we may have some boss battles there, and we have a couple Guardians of the game who are better when they're focused on a singular target. So we may see that. I don't know. That's just me guessing. Nobody knows anything about Rift Raids yet other than the developers. But those are my thoughts. But she doesn't have a lure. I know not all Guardians do. That's not the singular purpose as to why she's on the bottom of my list right now. I just don't feel she's that effective as a tank in her current state, and being more effective against a single target when you got so many targets on the board. So there are my 2 cents when it comes to tanks. Now, when we go and take a look at support, there are so many great support characters in this game. It made it kind of easy to choose the bottom 2 for me. Now, we have Ian. I know some people like Ian. I'm not a huge fan of him. His kit is interesting, though, because he switches back and forth between a strength charge and a fortitude charge. And depending on the charge, it helps his allies gain attack or gain defense, which I think is pretty cool. If you take a look at his signet here, when the strength charge is active, Ian's special ability inflicts the target with a defense debuff. If it's a fortitude charge, there's a lot of back and forth here. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the Moonkin in World of Warcraft and bouncing back and forth between the different states. I'm not a huge fan of it. I got used to it in World of Warcraft. But when it comes to healing, when it comes to how effective of a support character you are, not just with healing, but with everything else that comes with your kit and crowd control and things like that. If you take a look at Mickey, right? Mickey offers a damage shield that reflects damage back to the enemy. He also helps reduce special ability cooldowns. He has a good heal. He's got a knockback. He's got a stun. There's a lot of utility there. There's just not a lot of utility with Ian, so that's why he's one of the ones at the bottom of my list. The other one is going to be Jack Sparrow. Now, when it comes to Jack Sparrow, I really liked him early on. I thought he was cool early in beta, things like that. But he is really focused, or he gets better with his curse charges. And so if we go ahead, we take a look at his kit here real quick. So Jack Sparrow gains a curse charge every 5 seconds as long as he has less than 3 curse charges. So once you have that, it changes a little bit, right? Jack Sparrow has a 7% chance when dealing and receiving a hit to gain a curse charge. So the intent of the support is not to get hit, but he has to hit or cause damage. But it's a 7% chance. It's super low. You don't really rack them up very quickly. They do. I mean, you can max out at your charges. Jack Sparrow cleanses all attribute debuffs from each ally. Again, maybe in a later game mode, this will come into play. Jack Sparrow then removes all curse charges and heals all allies 1% HP plus 1% per curse charge. So the more charges he has, the more healing he's going to do. But even that healing isn't huge. It's not massive. Each time Jack scores a critical hit, he has a 33% chance or a low percent chance to inflict a minus 10% focus debuff on his target. So again, you're not really going to put a whole lot of focus in your support because your support shouldn't be doing damage, shouldn't be focused on that at all. It should be keeping your team alive, crowd control, things like that. And just for that, I think really with that, that's the reason why he's at the bottom of my list when it comes to support. And again, there's so many great support. You got Scrooge, you got Mickey, Belle is good. You've got Jack Skellington when he comes out for everybody else. You've got Hiro Hamada. You have some great support, and I think these supports really just fall off. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at range because we're saving melee for last. If we take a look at ranged here, there's 2 really that stick out for me. We've got some great ranged here with some Zerg and Tron and Gaston and Judy and stuff like that. Some people like Goofy and Buzz as well. But one for me is going to be Evie right here. Eve or Evie, I can't remember how it's pronounced. When you take a look at her kit here, it's okay. She's immune to wound and some poison. She has these shield charges. The shield charges, they're inflicted with a shock, dealing 10% damage per second for 10 seconds. Evie's shield then needs to recharge. When you take a look at her special here, it does some damage to everybody in a small area, right? Again, with the ranged, when you're taking a look at the amount of damage that comes out, Zerg, Tron, they all do quite a bit of damage. You got some bleed with Gaston. She just really doesn't have much here that's really overly exciting. She does have a stun. It is a low percent chance for a stun. I'm not going to try and max it out to 100. You know, it'd be nice to have a slider bar here so I can go ahead and go all the way up to 100 really quickly instead of having to continually tap on the plus button to find out what the max would be. But yeah, she's just, I mean, there's, again, so many other great Guardians in the ranged category. That will do so much better for you, and you'll want to put your resources into. The other one here is going to be Tinks for me. Tinkerbell, isn't it Tinks in like Hook? So when it comes to her, I mean, each time Tinkerbell damages her target with a basic attack, 60% chance for pixie dust. It's all around this pixie dust component, right? Then when we go to Supernova here, Tinkerbell turns Supernova, which is this cool form, right? Gains an attack buff. And for each stack of pixie dust, that's really kind of what comes into play. You really want to make sure to stack up the pixie dust to get that attack buff up there. It's just, again, so many other Guardians in the ranged category where you're going to get further in the game if you focus on other Guardians rather than these two. So again, all of these Guardians just seem to fall short when you stack them up against who their competition is in each role. Now, finally, we go ahead and we take a look at Melee. One of them I kind of like, but the other one here, Hook, I think it's a universal opinion that Hook is probably the worst Guardian in the roster. And I don't know. I like the look of him. I think it's pretty cool. But when it comes to his kit, I just don't think there's much there. It's all around this marked. When Captain Hook attacks an enemy without armor or lure, he applies a mark. But if they gain armor or lure, which happens a lot in the game, then that mark is going to be removed. He's got that attack buff that comes into play. When you take a look at his signature here, his basics have a very small % chance to purge one buff from a marked enemy. I think there's probably more that can be done there. So I think he really needs quite a bit of work. His damage doesn't stack up. I know I've seen some people really max him out and take him out pretty far, and he does some significant damage. But if you put him up against others at that same level, then I think you're going to agree that you can do better with others like Ariel, like Scar, Snow White, Minnie, things like that. The other one is Stitch. I want Stitch to be good. Now, I know I do like him. I think this whole superheated Stitch and everything is cool. His heavy attacks. So Stitch can use his heavy attacks to change between his regular and metallic forms. While in metallic, he's got that increased defense. He's immune to wound and stun, which is pretty cool. This superheated mode here. So when he becomes superheated, he has the attack buff, immunity to burn. And then the whole thing here, though, is in order to maintain that, you have to constantly be attacking. Stitch then heal blocks his target for 12 seconds, causes some damage there with his special here. Stitch remains superheated as long as he's hitting an enemy at least once every 3 seconds. At least he doesn't have to stay with the same enemy, but just constantly have to be hitting. You really don't have an opportunity with him to switch between different allies in the game and maintain that superheated level. When you have a game here where one of the main mechanics is being able to switch between your 3 different Guardians on the battlefield, it comes in very handy when you want to move support out of harm's way, when you want to take over a range to do some heavy damage, switch back to your tank or your melee. Being able to switch, I think, is really key in this game and is a very cool strategy if you get really used to it. Stitch kind of takes that away. And again, I think he can do some decent damage, but when you look at the other melee in this game, I think, again, those other 4 that I mentioned, those 4 are actually in my top 4 for the melee role. They're going to do much better. They're going to do more damage. They're going to have more utility. And I think your resources would be better spent with them. All right, everybody. Whoa, this went a while. I thought this actually going over 2 for each one, I didn't think would take as long, but it definitely did. Apologize for the length of the video. Very curious on your thoughts, though. Who would you classify as the worst in the roster right now for each one of these roles? Do you agree with anything I said? If not, definitely let me know in the comment section below who you think belongs at the bottom of the roster here as far as who's the best and who's the worst. I'd very much be interested in your thoughts. All right, everybody, that is what I had for you. As always, I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. Take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.